In the 1980s, Australian touring cars were dominated by two powerhouses, being Ford with their EB Falcon and Holden with their VN Commodore. These cars ran under the Group A regulation, which had production cars pushed to their limits as engineering, skill and endurance defined every lap. Teams competed using a mix of V8 muscle cars and lighter European cars, with major brands such as BMW, Audi, Toyota and Nissan competing on many famous tracks like the Nürburgring, Suzuka and most importantly, Bathurst's own track, Mount Panorama.
And Jason Richards, whoa! Oh! Exactly the same. Oh, trouble. Big trouble at the end of the back straight, and that's a terrible incident. A terrible incident for
Moment, it's rolled.
It's a Bundy car.
No, it's not, I'm sorry.
However, this all changed as the new decade arrived, as one team introduced a car that changed the entire playing field of Group A forever. Before the R32 GT-R made its way into the Australian racing scene, races were dominated by Holden and Ford, with their naturally aspirated V8 Falcons and Commodores that utilised raw power to dominate the long straights. While the European manufacturers bought lighter, turbocharged cars like the BMW M3, which controlled the corners, forcing teams to focus on strategy and endurance. Nissan had already begun entering the series with their naturally aspirated skylines such as the R31 GT-R in the late 80s. The R31 made 430 horsepower, making it a competitive car, achieving some podiums as it took third at the 1989 Tooheys 1000 at Mount Panorama, only being beaten by the most dominant car of that time, the Ford Sierra RS 5000. Nissan showed glimpses of what was possible with the R31 GT-R and advanced engineering. However, Ford and Holden still controlled most races. Despite that, Nissan pushed development for a new production car, with the goal of breaking limits to beat both Ford and Holden to dominate Group A, thus setting the stage for the Nissan R32 GT-R. Nissan unveiled the R32 GT-R in the middle of the 1990 season, running its now famous red, white and blue livery, replacing the older R31 GT-STT. The R32 brought a massive overhaul to the Skyline series in ways that Group A had never seen before. The R32 included the new RB26 DETT, which was a 2.6 litre twin turbo pushing 550 to 600 horsepower, which was a massive increase from the R31's 400 horsepower. Thanks to these upgrades, the Nissan was able to keep up with the Holden and Fords on the straights. However, what differentiated the Nissan R32 to the mighty Ford Sierra RS 500 and the Holden's VN Commodore was the technology installed in the Skyline. Nissan had equipped the new Skyline with its advanced total traction engineering system for all terrain, also known as the ATESA. ATESA constantly monitored wheel slip between the front and rear axles, which allowed torque to be split to either the front or rear when the system detected a loss of traction. ATESA allowed the R32 to behave like a rear-wheel drive car when taking corners, allowing the car to shift its rear quicker through the corner while also allowing the driver to put power down faster than its rivals. Nissan had also equipped the R32 Super High Cast system, which was a four-wheel steer system that helped further rotate the car with high levels of stability at high speeds. New technology and its powerful new RB26, the playing field of Group A was shifted forever, as the Fords and Holdens slowly became outclassed by the Nissan R32 GT-R. The Skyline demonstrated this power with Nissan's driver Jim Richards going on to win the 1990 Australian Touring Car Championships in the new GT-R, while also securing the 1990s Australian Touring Car Championship Manufacturers Award, where the R32 only started competing halfway through the 1990 season. This early success only highlighted what Nissan's R32 was capable of, as it would go on to win the 1991 and 1992 races at Bathurst. 1991 was Nissan's first full year with the R32 GT-R, where it would immediately dominate Group A. The Nissan had won round 1 in Sandown Raceway off the bat, which would set up driver Jim Richards and Mark Scafie to go on and win 7 out of the 9 races, with 6 of the 7 races finishing 1 and 2, showing how the Nissan's raw pace, strong reliability and technology made the car so dominant, every other car in Group A was struggling to keep up. The car would go on to win the Australian Touring Car Championship Manufacturers Award again, and driver Jim Richards would follow this up by securing the driver's title for that year. This dominant season ended with Nissan winning the Bathurst 1000, setting a record of 6 hours, 19 minutes and 14.8 seconds that stood unbeaten for 19 years. Again in 1992, the R32 would go on to dominate the Australian Group A again. This season, Nissan returned with an even stronger package, despite the introduction of weight penalties and turbo boost limits to slow down the GTR, but it still remained the fastest car on the track. Nissan retained its strong driver lineup as Jim Richards and Mark Skaife returned again for another season, able to push the car 2.5 seconds faster than the competition thanks to the previously mentioned Atessa and Super Highcast system. This margin would only increase on circuits like Amaru Park. In an attempt to slow down the R32, Nissan was forced to add 40 kilos of weight, which added up to a total weight of 1.4 tonne, and was forced to use a restrictor on its turbos, reducing its overall horsepower from 640 500. Despite that, the R32 GTR went on to win 4 out of 9 races in 1992, ultimately securing both drivers and the Australian Touring Car Championship Manufacturers Awards for 3 years straight. Nissan again competed in the Bathurst 1000 using its R32 GTR again. The GTR dominated the race despite weight penalties and turbo restrictions imposed to slow it down. Richards and Skaife finished first under a red flag after a late crash caused controversy, but it still highlighted the Nissan's overwhelming pace and the limits of their V8 rivals. By the end of 1992, Nissan had won the multiple championships and many famous racing events, being crowned Godzilla by the Japanese press media when it stuck internationally. However, by the end of 1992, Nissan's dominance within Group A Motorsports would become so overwhelming that new regulations were imposed. The Group A rules had changed and introduced a new spec car based on the V8 rear-wheel drive cars, marking the peak of Nissan's success in Australian Group A and the beginning of the rule changes that would bring its era to an end. Today, the Bathurst 1000 is not the same. There's only 3 types of cars racing and it's simply not as fun to watch. While the races are still enjoyable and the commentary is still great, but the race lacks a level of ingenuity that was present during the 1990s. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and I'll see you in the next one.
With the pump tactics.